Greek food is inherently comforting. The ingredients are simple, the preparations are rustic. Whether you're preparing something traditional or something modern, the main ingredient is always conviviality. I'm gonna make you something special.
Today in the kitchen, I'm making Spanakopita grilled cheese, Feta mashed potatoes, Zakinthos chicken sarsa, and artichoke musaka.
Join me on my Greek table as I prepare some of my favorite Greek comfort recipes for you.
If the definition of comfort food is something edible and tasty, but also imbued with sentimental value, you know the Greeks have a word for it. Nostos, which means homecoming in ancient Greek, is also the root of the word nostalgia and the Greek word nostimo, which means delicious. Comfort food, Greek style, is the return to the flavors and dishes of home. Most Greek cuisine is indeed home cooking, but with myriad regional variations. From the range of savory pies that are part of the shepherd's tradition in the north, to the Italian-influenced dishes of the Ionian Islands, to the simple foods of the Aegean. All Greek food is based on fresh seasonal ingredients prepared in traditional ways that are passed down from generation to generation. This is a cuisine meant to be shared. Food is a call to gather around the table, clink glasses, partake in conversation, and enjoy the moment with friends and family. It's the call to come home to the most fundamental and comforting pleasures of life.
The ultimate Greek comfort food is Spanakopita, something that every Greek grows up with, half the world knows, right? I'm turning something traditional into something a little sinful. I'm making Spanakopita grilled cheese. I'm starting with my onions, just gonna get them soft and a little bit golden. Spanakopita is often something I make at home. I happened to have a little leftover filling one day. My son came home from school. I had bread, I had a frying pan. I always have olive oil in the house. I looked at him and I said, I'm gonna make you something special. Just a little trick, I'm adding some salt to my onions. It draws out the moisture and they cook a little faster. I don't wanna brown the onions. I really just wanna soften them and they start to turn, lightly golden. And this is just coarsely chopped fresh spinach. You could also use frozen. And you do this in increments because it doesn't all fit in the pan. So basically cooking it down. The one thing you definitely want to do after you finish sauteing the spinach and onions is strain out the filling a little bit because the spinach is very wet and you don't want to have soggy grilled cheese, right? So you have to strain it out. This is pretty much ready. And you want the spinach to look alive, right? You don't want it to be totally limp and wilted, so you want some color in there. So I'm just gonna let this sit for a few minutes. I'm emptying it into a clean bowl because I obviously don't want all the water that drained out of it. Now that the spinach mixture is cooled down, I can add the rest of the good stuff. My herbs, salt, a little nutmeg, some pepper, and of course the cheese to make it Spanakopita grilled cheese, Greek feta. The cheese, like certain wines, has to be produced in specific regions of Greece to legally be called feta in Europe. I have a little parsley and dill here. Those are the classic herbs in a Greek Spanakopita filling. A little bit of salt, not too much because the feta is salty, remember. A little bit of nutmeg. It's a classic spice Nutmeg and spinach go really well together. A little pepper. I can smell that dill, it's really good. So this is easy as pie, almost, easy as grilled cheese, basically. This is enough filling probably for about 4 sandwiches, 4 grilled cheese sandwiches. You basically just want to get it on one side of the bread. Don't be afraid to overstuff your Spanakopita grilled cheese. The Greeks do comfort with a little excessiveness. A little extra virgin Greek olive oil. Okay, now that just has to cook a little bit. Remember, the filling is pretty much done, so now the whole point is just to get the bread a little golden and crisp. I'm ready to flip the grilled cheese. You want to do this a little carefully. That is a beautiful sight. To me, Spanakopita is the essence of Greek cuisine. This is ready. The feta is just starting to melt. Wow, this is great. And you know what? If some of that spinach filling falls out, just enjoy it. So good. If there are any diner owners out there, this has to go on your menu. The sourdough bread, the olive oil, the spinach, the feta, this is total comfort food. Spanakopita is Greek, but Spanakopita grilled cheese should know no boundaries. This is just too good not to share.
I love holidays and family meals with my sisters and our extended clan of noisy, fun-loving Greek relatives. Everyone's favorite edible comfort, mashed potatoes. Coming up next, my family version, with a Greek twist, of course.
For my feta mashed potatoes, I combine water, potatoes, and a generous amount of salt in a pot, and bring all of that to a boil. I cook the potatoes until the skins burst and the potatoes are fork tender. Once the potatoes are cooked through, I drain them, I cool them slightly, and then I peel them. The skins come off really easily when the potatoes are hot. See how they just peel right off? I like to cut the potatoes into chunks, just because it's a little bit easier to mash. And I like to mash them by hand. So the first thing you want to do is add the olive oil. And that's what gives it its really silky but also earthy flavor. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of milk. You kind of want to eyeball the mashed potatoes when you're adding your ingredients because every time you boil a potato, it'll absorb the liquid a little bit differently. I'm going to add my Greek yogurt next. That gives it this really nice, very subtle underlying tartness. And I'm going to add my garlic. A little bit more milk. And I'm going to add the feta cheese next and salt at the end because the feta is innately salty, so you just want to taste it. You want to use crumbled Greek feta, you can crumble it yourself. Really what you're looking for is for the feta to sort of partially melt. It never melts completely, so these are almost chunky mashed potatoes. You want to feel the feta. This is done. I'm just going to taste it for salt. Needs a little bit of salt and a little pepper. Get my parsley chopped. You want the parsley to be finely chopped in this so that it's, it's smooth like the potatoes. These are ready. They look great. They smell even better. Looks good to me. Just a little more Greek gold over my feta mashed potatoes. Yum. These feta mashed potatoes go great with all sorts of comfort food. One of my family favorites is with my chicken sarsa. Don't we all think of chicken when we think of comfort food? I'm making a really easy traditional dish from the island of Zakinthos, and like almost everything else in the Greek kitchen, it also has a story. I want to saute my onions to get them soft. Not too much color on them, just to soften them up. The name of this dish, chicken sarsa, comes from the Italian salsa, and it's just the way that the islanders on Zakinthos, where this is from, learned how to pronounce it, not speaking Italian, I guess, at the time. But the Italians ruled the Ionian Islands for about 400 years. So a lot of food in that part of Greece actually has Italian-sounding names. I'm gonna add my garlic, and there's a lot of it. Garlicky tomato sauce is something that you find throughout the 7 islands of the Ionian. Next, I'm going to add my tomatoes. I'm gonna add a few oregano sprigs, just to give the sauce a little brightness, a little vibrancy. Just a little bit of water, keep it moist. Next, I'm going to season the chicken. You wanna season it pretty generously with salt and pepper. The last step is to add a splash of red wine vinegar. Smells really good. I'm gonna take the oregano sprigs out of here. They've perfumed the sauce, but I don't want to bake them. Next, the sarsa goes into the chicken. Comfort food should be comforting at every level, every step of the way. You don't want to stress out cooking comfort food. Beautiful. Just to make sure that this stays nice and moist in the oven, I'm gonna add a little bit of water to it. I'm looking at this thinking roasted chicken smothered in a nice, vibrant tomato sauce. Doesn't get more comforting than that. This will bake at 350 for about an hour. And about 10 minutes before it comes out of the oven, I'm gonna add sharp kefalotiri cheese to it. Just cubes here and there throughout. That's really all we want. And I'm gonna put this back into the oven just until the cheese starts to melt. Wow. If comfort was a perfume, this is what it would smell like. This is absolutely perfect. What is it gonna go great with? My feta mashed potatoes. Comfort me with chicken sarsa any day of the week. This is a winner. Really simple, really humble, but really great. I like to pair my chicken sarsa with a nice Greek red wine, an Artichoke. This is from Nemea, and it's a nice red wine with plummy fruit, soft tannin, and good structure to stand up to the robust, vibrant quality of this dish. Isi Gian.
I've traveled all over Greece, gathering delicious, soothing recipes along the way. Known for their artichokes and artichoke pies, the island of Tinos always fires up my imagination.
I'm making one of my signature dishes today, artichoke musaka. It's a variation on a Greek classic. Everyone knows musaka, right? Or musaka, as you might have heard of it, which is most people think of as a dish of layered eggplant and ground meat and bechamel. This is a vegetarian version of that, and it's actually inspired by a recipe from the island of Tinos in the Kyklades, one of the places in Greece where artichokes are a major crop. Both dishes require bechamel, the classic French white sauce. The first step in making a bechamel is to make what's called the roux, which is the butter and flour mixture. So I've got 6 tablespoons of butter in here, 6 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. I'm gonna cook the flour in the butter. The whole idea is to cook the flour so that you don't get that taste of raw flour in the final sauce. I'm gonna add my milk. You can add it slowly so that it doesn't steam up, and you can see it starting basically to coagulate as soon as I do that. The reason why you want to whisk all the time is to keep the bechamel smooth. You don't want it to be lumpy. And you certainly don't want it to stick to the bottom of the pan. You want to do this over a medium to low flame. Add my cream, whisking while I do that. The more I cook this, obviously the thicker it'll become. I want to be able to pour it over my musaka right before putting it into the oven. Just a little bit of salt. Oh, that's looking really good. My bechamel is ready. It's nice and thick and creamy. That's exactly what we want. And I'm just gonna turn off the flame, whisk 2 eggs and add them to the sauce. You just want to lightly beat the eggs. Add them right to the hot sauce. You want to whisk them very vigorously so that they don't turn into an omelet inside the pan. You don't want egg drop bechamel. And the next thing that goes in here are my 3 Greek cheeses. Feta is the classic sort of national cheese of Greece, and it's a nice, tangy, briny cheese. Kefalograviera is a sheep's milk cheese. It's a mild yellow cheese, and it adds a nice creaminess to the final bechamel. And anthotiro is a whey cheese, kind of like ricotta. My bechamel is done. If you have to keep bechamel for a while before you're going to use it, you want to always cover it with a kitchen towel. I want the steam to be able to escape, but I don't want the bechamel to form a film on the surface. The first vegetable that I'm going to cook are my onions, and I do that in a little bit of butter and olive oil. A lot of red onions. Actually, this is the secret to the artichoke musaka, because the onions are going to caramelize, and it's that underlying sweetness that makes this dish so comforting. Potatoes next. You want to use a classic, all-purpose potato like a Yukon Gold. And all I'm really looking for is for the potatoes just to cook a little bit so that when I layer them, they're nice and tender. A little bit of salt on my onions, and just a tiny bit of salt on the potatoes for the same reason. I'm going to continue cooking my onions and my potatoes, and when they're done, you can start layering the musaka. My onions are beautifully caramelized. I'm gonna start with just a little bit of olive oil on the bottom of the pan. And I always sprinkle the bottom of the pan with a little bit of breadcrumb, basically to keep the potatoes from sticking. My potato slice is nice and soft. You want to cover most of the surface. You don't have to be very, very meticulous about it. A little bit of salt and pepper. I add a little bit of breadcrumb over the potatoes as well, because they've absorbed some of the olive oil from the frying, and I don't want the musaka to be soggy. I'm adding about 1/3 of my onion mixture. You want to get the onions over as much of the surface as possible. One of the other secrets to this dish is my herb mixture: parsley, oregano, thyme, and basil. A little bit of feta cheese over my potatoes before I put my artichokes on top of them. The artichokes I'm using in this dish are frozen and defrosted, and I've cut them into very thin slices. Artichokes are a vegetable that a lot of people don't necessarily associate with Greek cooking, but in fact, they're one of the most ancient vegetables in Greece. A little salt and pepper. Artichokes are a tough vegetable to pair wine with. They're so acidic, so I'd like to counter that with these onions. A little more feta, breadcrumb, a little bit more of my herb mixture, and the remaining potatoes. Again, if they don't cover the entire surface of the pan, not to worry. The best thing about Greek cooking is that it's very flexible. I'm gonna get my artichokes over this next. And then the rest of my onions, my herbs, my feta. Ready for my bechamel, and it's perfect. No film on top. It's nice and creamy. That's exactly what we want. This will seep into the entire pan, and think of it as the delicious glue that holds this whole musaka together. This looks perfect to me. I'm gonna bake it at 350 for about 50 minutes to an hour. We want the bechamel on top to have a beautiful golden color. Can't wait to cut into this. It looks great. Oh, look at that. This is perfect comfort food. I'm getting the acidity from the artichokes, that beautiful herbal quality from all those fresh herbs, the richness of the cream sauce of the bechamel, that slight acidity from the feta. I'm gonna marry this with a Greek wine from Santorini, and a Artichoke, which is really dry and crisp, a little bit lemony, and it pairs beautifully with the richness and the acidity in the artichoke musaka. Isiyan.